Welcome to M Recap, your go-to channel for all things cinematic. I'm excited to explore the world of movies together. From Hollywood blockbusters to indie gems, we dissect plots, explore characters, and uncover hidden treasures. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and join our M Recap community for film recommendations and exclusive insights. Get ready for a cinematic adventure. M Recap in English.
The planet has become uninhabitable because humanity has brought climate change, pandemics, and war to Earth. The ruling elite escapes as soon as they can and settle on the Kepler 209 space colony. Over time, the colony acquires technology that is modern space travel, but they have become infertile due to the heavy radiation there. 2 generations later, the Ulysses project is started to find out whether it is possible to return to Earth. However, the mission that is first lost shortly after landing. Sometime later, they send a ship that is second Ulysses to with astronauts Louise Tucker and Holden. Unfortunately, entering the atmosphere turns out to be rougher than expected, and the space capsule crash lands on a tidal flat near a weather beacon that broadcasts telemetry data back to Kepler, after swimming to the shore with all her strength in order to survive. Louise looks for her partners. Holding is also on the beach, but unfortunately, he's already dead and Tucker is inside the space capsule with a leg that is injured. Louise has no choice but to alone go exploring, starting by testing the water with a barometer and finding some signs of life. The creature suddenly stings her wrist after finding some sort of Chelos hirata. Louise comes across a jellyfish-like animal, and when she tries to take a sample for testing. Luckily, Louise has a kit that is medical. Immediately squirts some medical spray on the wound before putting the sample in her red bag. At that moment, Tucker tells her that a storm is coming and Louise loses her visibility when a fog that is thick so Tucker climbs out of the capsule and shoots up a flare. Following the light, Louise slowly begins making her way back to the shuttle, unaware that a man that is mysterious saw the flare. He gets to the shuttle first and attacks Tucker, who defends himself with a flare gun and scares him away. By the right time Louise finally crosses the fog, she finds out that Tucker and the shuttle have been taken somewhere else. She can hear Tucker yelling for help. A group of people dragging her shuttle, so she uses the scope on her gun and notices. Suddenly another combined group attacks her from behind and Louise loses consciousness. Sometime later, Louise and Tucker wake up in a pit that is large and they're shocked to find their survivors closing the lid. Seeing Tucker's injuries getting worse, Louise climbs up into a hole. She asks for medical supplies, but it is too slippery and she falls. A rope is thrown down by a mysterious figure and Louise finally climbs out to find a whole community of fertile humans known as the Muds. At that moment, Louise can't believe she's seeing children again. Unfortunately, she doesn't understand the language and she gets dragged away as the Muds use gestures to ask her to help the man whose face was injured by Tucker's flare. Louise tries to explain she is needed by her supplies and finally Narvik shows up. She knows how to speak English and takes Louise to her shuttle. Finding the tools that are medical easy, but Louise also notices that someone has removed all the technology from the ship. When she hesitates to move, she's pushed to the ground and asked to behave. Afterward, Louise heals the man that is injured a spray, using the chance to hide some medical supplies in her clothes. She also notices someone has a bag that is red. The barometer is inside. When she's thrown back in the pit, she gives Tucker medicine while telling him about all the young kids and babies she saw. Since their ship is broken, she believes it to call for help that they must find the barometer and use. However, Tucker knows his injuries are bad and he won't make it. That he stores in his army tag necklace and ends things for himself, so he takes a solution. Feeling lonely. Now, Louise begins thinking about her childhood. Her father Blake had also been an astronaut and he was lost with the mission that is first. Her a matchbox with 3 famous astronauts on the front and showed her he had one of his own so they could match when she was a child. Blake gave. He also told her to light one at a time. That is certain he would do the same, promising that before the last one was gone, they would be together again. The phrase "for the many," which Louise repeats all the right time, had been taught to her by her dad so she would learn to care about the greater good. The flashback fades and it's revealed that Louise only has 1 match left. The tides finally come in and start to fill the pit at that moment. So Louise begins climbing up again, grabbing onto the lid. She asked for help and a guy accepts to outtake her and tie her to one of the community's boats. Louise behaves to gain their trust while watching a net retrieve Tucker's body. As the boat takes off in the middle of the night, Louise watches Tucker's body being sent away on a raft, and this inspires another flashback. Louise's father told her that the social people had plundered Earth's resources and showed her a tree seedling which would not grow on their space colony. Unfortunately, he left shortly after that and Louise could see if the never experiment with a seedling was successful. The morning that is next, the water begins to recede and Louise is thrown back in the pit. Suddenly, she's visited by a girl named Milea who gives Louise her medical spray. By drawing on the wall, Louise finally manages to communicate with the girl and learns a few words. Her get the biomotor. Sometime later, Louise hears screaming outside and a lid is raised for a man to lower some girls and a baby into the pit, so she asks Mila to help. By spying through the hole, Louise sees that the settlement is being attacked and people that are many being killed or kidnapped. Milea found the bag that is red. She's kidnapped as well. A man comes to the pit to check inside, but Louise and the young children hide just in time. After the situation calms down, Narvik shows up to help them out, revealing that she is Majla's mother. After picking Milo's doll and Tucker's flare gun, Narvik runs off to save her daughter. Louise follows her if she does share some food with her because she wants to help her to save Milea, but Narvik isn't sure she can trust her even. At that moment they can hear Majla's screams from afar, so the two women climb on a rock that is big. Learn that the captives are being taken away on a boat. Louise tells Narvik to shoot the flare gun into the sky as a distraction, but Narvik wants to attack blindly, so Louise has no choice but to outknock her. Then Louise shoots the flare and the men begin looking for the source of the light. She quickly swims to the boat. While they are distracted, Louise jumps into the water with a fog acting as cover, and after climbing up, she finally finds her bag that is red and net, but before she can leave, the men come aboard as well. Louise has no choice but to hide with Milea and the other prisoners. Eventually, the boat stops at an cargo that is enormous, capable of withstanding the frequent floods and storms. The prisoners are taken to a guard named Paley, who decides where each of them goes. The boys are sent to work while Milea and the other girls are taken away. Then Paling finds Louise's gun in the bag that is red. While looking for the owner, he realizes Louise isn't a local. Paling takes her through a quarter and after searching her, he introduces her to the ship's leader Gibson, who turns out to be a survivor of the Ulysses 1 and remembers Louise from when she was a kid. Louise tells him what happened to her ship and about the biomotor that is missing. In return, Gibson tells her of his group's first encounter with the Muds when they arrived. Blake had been very good with the locals, but one day they suddenly rebelled and destroyed the Ulysses 1 capsule along with its communication equipment, killing Blake in the process. Apparently Blake had a plan to build a dam that is giant, use the ocean as electricity. So Gibson discusses with Louise the chances of bringing people from the colony back to Earth. Their conversation is interrupted by Gibson's adopted son Neil, who gifts Louise an origami space shuttle. A tour of the place to show off the dam. Gibson takes Louise to a cabin where she can stay for now. After giving Louise, she immediately goes to bed and tries to deal with her grief while remembering more science lessons with her father. The next morning after a shower, Louise finds blood between her legs and realizes so she could reproduce here that she is fertile. Afterward, she's taken to a class full of the daughters of the Muds, including Milea, who doesn't look very happy. Gibson is educating them and he gives them the chance to ask Louise all kinds of questions about the space colony after they share a song. Once the class is over, Louise goes for a walk and finds Neil, who gets lessons that are private of joining the others. He likes Louise with his math homework. He shows her a secret that keeps hiding behind a curtain because he loves astronauts, and after she helps him, it's a tree that is small in a jar. Recognizing the experiment, Louise asks Neil how he learned to do that, and he replies that there is a man that is strange in a cabin next to the engine room. Louise wants Neil to take her there, but he isn't supposed to talk to the man at all and refuses. After taking a map of the ship from a door, Louise quickly makes her way to the man's cabin, where she learns that her father is alive and has been locked away all this time. At that brief moment, Gibson shows up and begins justifying his lies by explaining that Blake actually led the rebellion because he sided with the Muds after falling in love with a Mud woman. Then Louise is finally allowed inside and reunites with her dad after 15 years. She is disappointed that her dad has betrayed the mission and given up on his daughter, but Blake explains that the Kepler residents should return to Earth, never saying he has to stop the mistakes. Hurt, Louise runs out of the room. Later, when the tide is high, Louise finally gets to see the weather station where the barometer can be connected by them to contact Kepler. She decides to tell Gibson so she can be the evidence they need, and Gibson promises to find the barometer that she is fertile. Then Louise is invited to dinner and Neil's mother Munii tells Louise how Gibson found her when she was birthed, that is giving saved Neil from dying because he was born with his umbilical cord around his neck. That they connected and Gibson adopted them as his family day. Suddenly the power goes off and informs that are Paling that an intruder took out the guards to reach the power box. Gibson immediately orders everyone to hide in their room before leaving with a gun. Louise takes a quarter to return to her cabin only to be caught by the intruder, who holds a knife to Louise's throat and hurts her. It's then revealed that the intruder is Narvik, who is looking for her daughter. Louise takes Narvik to see Milea, but as soon they are suddenly surrounded by guards as they enter the girl's room. The women tried to fight them while Milo cries out for her mother, but Paling shows up and kicks Narvik, somehow knowing her name. Then Paling orders his men to take Narvik away, but that they only take the girls and accidentally drops Majlisdal before she leaves. She whispers to Louise. Afterward, power returns and Muna treats Louise's wound. She has his eyes, as she mysteriously says. Louise looks at the posters on the wall and notices they're all photos of girls and pregnancies. At that moment, Gibson comes to check during the rebellion on her and tells Louise that Narvik was one of the guards who turned against him. The situation was discussed by them, and Louise finally discovers that the girls are being held captive for Gibson's future breeding plans. Louise is disgusted but pretends to be Gibson's ally to avoid being arrested. Suddenly Paling comes in with a bag that is red, but when Gibson opens it, the barometer isn't inside. He sends Louise away and tells Paling to keep an optical eye on her before turning to his son, who shows him a doll he found. Gibson then notices that the barometer is inside the doll. He heard a kid is missing. When she returns to her room, Louise hears a noise and finds Milo hiding in her closet, but Paling suddenly knocks on her door and forces his way in because he looks around quickly and doesn't find Mila. But instead of leaving, he begins hitting on Louise, not carrying him down about her turning. After some struggle, he pushes her against the wall, but with a kiss before he can take advantage of her. He hears a noise coming from the closet. Paling moves to investigate, but Louise rushes to him and distracts him. Suddenly starts that her Paling and falls to the ground as he dies because Louise slipped into his mouth a poison capsule from her army tag necklace. Afterward, Louise takes Paley's weapon and together with Milea sneaking in big around the ship. When they encounter a guard, Mila distracts him and Louise knocks him out from behind. Then the cell is reached by them where they keep all the prisoners. They use his work slaves. Narvik is there too, and Louise gives her the guard's weapon before she escapes with the others. The girls, Louise goes to find Blake, who shows her something at the window while the prisoners rescue. It turns out Gibson is going to the weather station with Neil and Munii, which is weird because he never leaves the ship. Then Louise notices the doll Neil gifted Blake and realizes the barometer is had by that Gibson. She doesn't understand what proof Gibson will send her data. She accepts to stop Gibson, and Blake tells her he never let his last match without her, and Blake reveals Neil isn't a mud. Louise hugs. Meanwhile, the muds escape from the ship while dodging gunfire from the guards. Louise joins them and shoots a men that are few. The group runs out in the open where more guards take the chance to kill a few of them. Louise shoots any guard that comes too close and helps the combined group reach a boat before getting in the water to swim to the weather station. Gibson has taken Neil's blood and is about to send the message, but Louise reveals herself and threatens him with her weapon. Gibson responds by pointing his gun at Neil, revealing that he's Blake's son and therefore her half-brother. Munii tries to defend her son, but Gibson simply shoots her in the head. Louise lowers her weapon to save Neil from the fate that is same. Gibson immediately sends the data to Kepler using the biomotor. Since he's distracted, Louise uses the chance to tackle them into the water. Then she strangles and drowns Gibson, almost drowning herself in the process. Fortunately, Narvik rescues her and manages to revive her with CPR. Louise and Blake rejoin the muds and all of them set out in a tugboat. Neil is grieving his mother's death, so Louise goes to talk to him and give him her matchbox as a sign of hope. Moments later, a combined group of children are playing around back in the settlement and get scared when they see figures in the fog. However, they perk up when they realize it's their kidnapped parents who are finally free from Gibson's control. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.